Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're going to unpack one of the most incredible stories in history. How the ancient city of Athens went from being run by a handful of super rich families to inventing, well, the world's first democracy.
It's an amazing story. And it didn't happen overnight. It was, a real struggle born from some pretty extreme inequality.
So let's set the stage. What did Athens look like at the beginning of this story?
Well, it was an aristocracy. That just means that a few powerful, wealthy families, the aristocrats, owned almost all the land.
And they didn't just own the land, they were the law. They ran the government, the courts, everything.
Exactly. And for the common person, a farmer or a craftsman, life was incredibly tough. I mean, there was no safety net.
And this is where it gets really dark. If you were a farmer and your crops failed, you'd have to borrow money.
Right. And if you couldn't pay it back, that debt wasn't just a number. The aristocrats could literally seize you and your entire family and sell you all into slavery.
Wow. Your own fellow citizens could sell you?
hmm So you can imagine the tension. The city was always sort of on a nice edge. You had this constant threat of a massive, violent uprising.
Okay, so something had to give. The system was totally unstable.
It was. And the first real attempt to fix things comes around 621 BC with a man named Draco.
Draco. He was brought in to write down the laws for the first time, right? Which sounds kind of boring, but it was actually a huge deal.
A monumental deal. Before Draco, the laws weren't written down anywhere. They were just, known by the aristocrats, who could basically interpret them however they wanted.
So justice was totally arbitrary.
Completely.
Yeah.
Writing the laws down meant that for the first time, the government controlled justice, not just some powerful family. Everyone could see the rules.
But the rules themselves, this is what he's famous for. We still use the word draconian today.
And for good reason.
Yeah.
His laws were described as being written in blood.
So harsh.
Incredibly harsh. The death penalty was the punishment for almost everything. Not just murder. We're talking about things like stealing an apple or even just being lazy.
He was trying to create stability through what? Sheer terror.
Basically, yeah. But the terror didn't work because it didn't solve the real problem.
The debt.
Exactly. The debt crisis was the time bomb, and Draco completely ignored it. So farmers were still losing their land, still being sold into slavery.
So enter the next guy, Solon, around 594 BC. And his job was basically to prevent a civil war.
It was. He was given incredible power to fix the mess. And his first move was just revolutionary.
He went right for the debt issue.
He did. He issued something called the Cleisthenes, which means the shaking off of burdens.
Yeah.
He just canceled all existing debts, wiped the slate clean.
Just like that. A massive reset button.
A total reset. And then he made it illegal, permanently, for any Athenian citizen to be sold into slavery for debt. That was a game changer. It meant your citizenship couldn't be taken away by a loan.
So he saved the poor from slavery, but he also had to keep the rich from revolting. How did he manage that?
Well, he was smart. He knew he couldn't just strip all power from the elites. So he created a new system where power was based on wealth, not just on your family name.
He created 4 classes of citizens based on how much property they owned.
Right, and that might not sound super democratic to us, but think about it. He shifted the source of power from who you were born as to what you owned.
Which you could, in theory, change. A rich merchant could now have a say, even if he wasn't from an old aristocratic family.
Exactly. It opened the door for new people to get involved.
Yeah.
But it didn't solve everything. After Solon left, things got messy again.
Which leads to the age of the tyrants.
It does, and we have to be careful with that word tyrant. Today it means a cruel, evil ruler.
But back then it just meant someone who seized power by force, not that they were necessarily a bad guy.
Right. And the perfect example is a tyrant named Pisistratus. He was actually really popular with the common people.
What did he do?
He gave out loans to poor farmers, for one. But his big move was starting these massive public works projects, building huge temples, public fountains.
Ah, so he created jobs.
Jobs for everyone. For the stonemasons, the laborers, the craftsmen in the city. And this made people loyal to him, not the old aristocratic families.
So the tyrants, kind of by accident, weakened the old power structure even more.
They really did. They paved the way for the next, and biggest, leap forward.
Cleisthenes, in 508 BC, the man they call the father of Athenian democracy.
That's him. And Cleisthenes understood the biggest obstacle to true democracy was the power of those old families and their control over specific regions.
So he needed to break up their power bases.
And his solution was pure genius. He completely reorganized the population. He got rid of the old family-based clans and created 10 new tribes.
Okay.
But here's the brilliant part. Each tribe was a mix of people from 3 different areas. Some people from the city, some from the coast, and some from the rural farms.
Oh, I get it. So a rich landowner from the countryside was suddenly in the same political tribe as a fisherman from the coast and a potter from the city.
Precisely. They couldn't dominate their local area anymore. It forced people who were total strangers to work together for the good of the tribe, and ultimately for the good of Athens.
And this new system he created, this is what he called democratia.
Ruled by the people.
So let's talk about how this democratia actually worked day to day. The heart of the whole thing was the assembly, right?
The assembly, yeah. This was the main event. Any adult male citizen over 18 could go, speak, and vote.
And they met on a big hill called the Phoenix.
That's the one. Thousands of people would gather there. And this was direct democracy. They weren't electing representatives to vote for
They
them.
were voting themselves on everything. On going to war, on spending money, on new laws.
Everything. Just
Yeah.
a simple show of hands. The majority won right there on the spot. It's hard to even imagine today.
But how could you run a whole city like that? It must have been chaotic. Who handled the daily business?
That was the job of the Council of 500. Think of them as the city's managers. They handled the finances, met with foreign visitors, and set the agenda for the big assembly meetings.
And the way they chose the council is maybe the most amazing part of the whole system.
It really is. They didn't elect them. They chose them by a lottery.
A lottery? You mean they just drew names out of a hat?
Literally.
Mm-hmm.
50 men were chosen randomly from each of the 10 tribes to serve for 1 year. The Athenians believed that any citizen was capable of public service.
So a poor farmer had the exact same chance of being on the council as a rich merchant.
The exact same chance. For them, that was the definition of fairness.
But what about incompetence? Weren't they worried about putting unqualified people in charge of the city's money?
That's the classic critique, and they thought about it. But first, you only served for a year, so you couldn't do too much damage. And second, the council wasn't making the huge final decisions. That was always the assembly. For them, the risk of a little inefficiency was worth it to ensure everyone could participate.
That same spirit carried over into their courts, too.
It did. No professional judges or lawyers. Juries were made up of regular citizens.
And these juries were huge.
Massive. Sometimes 501 people, or even more. The idea was to make them impossible to bribe. I mean, you can bribe a judge. You can't secretly bribe 501 people.
So it was just the accuser and the person they were accusing making their cases directly to their fellow citizens?
Yep. Justice was literally in the hands of the people.
Okay, but with all this power in the hands of the people, they must have been terrified of one person becoming too powerful, right? Of another tyrant rising up.
They were. And they invented a very unique tool to prevent it. It was called ostracism.
I love this idea. Explain how it worked.
Once a year, the assembly would vote on whether to hold an ostracism. If they said yes, they'd come back and every citizen could write a name on a piece of broken pottery, an ostracon.
The name of the person they thought was the biggest threat to democracy.
Exactly. And if any one person got at least 6,000 votes, they were banished from Athens for 10 years.
But it wasn't a punishment for a crime, right?
Not at all. You didn't lose your property. You weren't considered a criminal. It was a political safety valve, a way to neutralize someone's influence before they became a dictator. After 10 years, you could just come right back.
That's an incredible system of checks and balances. But we have to talk about the huge blind spot in Athenian democracy. Who counted as the people?
Yeah, that's the crucial question. And the answer is not that many. Citizenship was limited to adult men who were born to 2 Athenian parents.
And that was only about, what, 10 to 20% of the total population?
At most.
Yeah.
So when you think about who was left out, it's a long list.
First, all women. No political rights, 0.
Then you have the medics, who were foreign residents. Many of them were essential to the city. They were merchants, thinkers, artists. They paid taxes, but they could never become citizens or vote.
And then the biggest group of all.
The slaves. The entire Athenian economy, their entire way of life, was built on the labor of a massive population of enslaved people who had no rights at all.
So this great experiment in freedom was built on mass unfreedom. It's a tough paradox to wrap your head around.
It is. But even with those limits, the system they did have created a culture where one skill was more important than any other.
Public speaking.
Rhetoric. The art of persuasion. If you wanted to get anything done in the assembly, you had to be able to stand up in front of thousands of your fellow citizens and make a convincing argument.
So this led to a whole industry of teachers, right? The sophists.
Rich families would hire them to teach their sons how to debate, how to speak, how to win an argument. This is why Athens became this incredible hub for philosophy and drama and debate. The political system fueled the culture.
And that legacy, those ideas, they lasted long after Athenian democracy itself fell.
They absolutely did. I
Yeah.
mean, fundamental ideas we take for granted, trial by jury, freedom of speech, even the words we use like democracy itself, that all comes from them.
So the story really shows that ordinary people can come together and figure out how to govern themselves. That's a revolutionary idea.
It changed the world. But here's a final thought to leave you with. The Athenians used a lottery to choose many of their leaders, specifically because they feared a class of professional career politicians. They thought anyone should be able to serve.
Whereas our modern system relies almost entirely on career politicians.
So the question is, did the Athenians know something we've forgotten? Was their fear of the professional ruler actually wiser than our embrace of them?
Something to think about. Good luck with your studies.